Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast, where we help you embrace the most courageous version of yourself. My name is Marie, and I'm an adventure seeker who is obsessed with following the joy and creating more freedom. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connection, join me on the quest to discovering how we can live a more magical and memorable life. Hello nerds! How are you today? I hope you are doing good and that you are not feeling frustrated. The subject of our episode today. So I'm going to talk about frustration and what this feeling is trying to tell you about yourself in the hope that raising our self-awareness will alleviate our hearts a little bit. So when we are frustrated, our muscles are tight. We are more likely to be impatient, to judge others, to get irritated. It's not a fun state to be in, and it can be a hard feeling to step out of, especially when we keep entertaining the same thoughts on a loop in our minds. But what if our frustration was not the result of something going wrong, but just a sign that we need to realign? Let's look at 3 things that your frustration might be pointing out to you. The first one, frustration might be a sign that you are letting another entity govern your life. This one has subcategories, and I'm going to give you examples for each of them to make sure we're on the same page. The first category is when you feel controlled or constrained, when your freedom is being jeopardized by a person, a thing, or a system. For example, your boss doesn't want you to take a day off. A forest fire makes it impossible for you to hike through a section of a trail. The COVID curfew enforced by government keeps you from coming home whenever you want. Whether we like it or not, we cannot live in a civilized world and escape the parameters of a certain form of order, right? Whether it be from people, from systems, from things. Some areas of the world have more regulations than others, for sure. And talking about where we should morally draw the line between personal freedom and the well-being of a community is always an interesting conversation to have. And there's always many different opinions. Think about Florida and California when it comes to COVID regulation, for example. 2 very different ways of looking at the same situation. The second category is when your boundaries are being crossed without permission. For example, you're being interrupted while doing something that's important to you. Your boss calls in the evening while you are with your friends. A stranger leans in too close to you. When I was relaxing on a bench in the park the other day, this woman got her giant poodle to jump across the bench a few inches from my face. She said to me that she was training him or something and not to worry that he was really well trained and he was not going to jump on me. Just a few inches from my face, that's it. So that's when your boundaries are being crossed without your permission. It can also be someone who keeps doing something after you've asked them to stop. Either with something as serious as sexual assault or as silly as a friend I had who kept burping loudly in my ear even though I had asked them to stop repeatedly. Finally, the third category is when someone takes something valuable away from you. That might be your time. You spent 2 hours waiting in line when you had other things to do. That might be your money. You get an unfair charge on your credit card. So 3 categories: being controlled or constrained, feeling like your boundaries are being crossed without permission, and something valuable being taken away from you. These can all cause frustration. What all of these examples have in common is that they are circumstances happening outside of you that might cause a feeling of frustration inside of you. I say might cause because when you take a moment to look at them, most of these situations are neutral. I want you to remember that no matter what happens in your external environment, you have power over your internal environment. The frustration occurs when we decide to attach meaning to a situation that is otherwise neutral. to have an opinion. And bear with me, I know it sounds like I'm telling you to move through life with indifference, and that's not the case at all. Keep listening and you'll understand what I mean. When Ollie and I were on the Pacific Crest Trail, we rented a car for 2 days at one point. And we brought it back right in time, dropped the keys in the drop-off box, and got back on the trail. When we emerged from the woods a week later, Thrifty, the car rental company, had charged us an extra $1,200 for keeping the car all week, which we obviously had not done. I figured that a quick phone call would fix this, but no. It turned into this big ass of a problem. The number of hours I spent swimming in frustration during that time is incalculable. After we built an extensive case for our credit card company with all the proofs we could gather, Visa gave us the money back, but we received threatening letters from a debt collector at our home. When I called my parents and told them about what was going on, I was lying in bed and felt like screaming in a pillow on the verge of a panic attack. My dad, who has had to deal with lawsuits of multiple millions over the course of his career, was calm. He was even amused. He told me to send him everything and that he would have fun writing a legal letter over the weekend. My first thought was like, oh my God, what would I have done without him? I'm so privileged. What about everyone who hasn't got someone like this to help them? But later I realized that yes, I was lucky, but that one, my dad wasn't born with that knowledge, and that two, his mindset towards the challenges that life throws at him is what got him where he is today. While my instinctive reaction is to want to run in a circle screaming about how unfair a situation is, his reaction is less reactive and less emotional. It's more thoughtful and cool-headed. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? And arguing about how unfair reality is, he asks, this happened, what can I do to fix it? I had an opinion on the situation and I let it take over my brain. He kept it neutral. Unless you're dealing with mental illness, most of us have control over our own peace of mind. And only when our mind is at peace are we able to find solutions to get our power back. That's what's crazy. We get wrapped up in our reactions, but this takes away all of our resourcefulness. Do not put the responsibility of your peace of mind into someone else's hands. You are its sole governor. Okay. One last example before we move on to the other thing that frustration might be trying to tell you is people who are frustrated and say things like, but if everyone followed the COVID regulations, this would be all over by now. This way of thinking doesn't work because if you're waiting for everyone to follow a set of rules in order for you to feel at peace, you will be waiting forever. All right, next. Frustration might be a sign that one of your needs is not being met. When you feel the frustration rising or have been twirling in its tornado for a while, ask yourself, what do I need to feel at peace right now? Let's keep going with the COVID example, since it's so current. Someone might answer, I need everyone to follow the rules. Or let's say your date is slow to reply to your texts. Ask yourself, what do I need to feel at peace right now? Your instinct might say, well, I need to know if they want to keep seeing me. Or imagine if your boss isn't grateful for all your hard work. Again, ask, what do I need to feel at peace right now? I need them to say thank you. All right. Well, there are all things you have no control over. And that's where many people get stuck, falling back into the frustration loop. Entertaining the same unhelpful thoughts about how if only things were like this, it would be so much better. In order to get out of that loop, we need to dig deeper and to find our purest, deepest need that is hiding behind our surface desire. Ask yourself, okay, how will I feel if everyone follows the COVID rules? I will feel safe. How will I feel if I know that my date wants to keep seeing each other? I will feel loved. How will I feel if my boss thanks me for my work? and we'll finally feel recognized. Those needs are 100% valid and deserve to be fulfilled. Now, how can you fulfill those needs yourself so you don't have to rely on other people to make you feel better? How can you meet your need for safety in a free world where people can pretty much do whatever they want to do? How can you meet your need for safety in a free world where people can pretty much do whatever the hell they want to do? You could wash your hands more often and wear 2 masks. You could consume different media or read books instead of watching the news. You could get involved in government or move to a different state. These are just a few random examples. How could you meet your need for love in a relationship where you can never be certain of how the other person feels? You could write yourself a love letter. You could treat yourself to a piece of clothing that makes you feel desirable. You could pour yourself a bath or masturbate. How could you meet your need for recognition in a job where your boss is busy keeping the boat afloat and not aware of his employees' feelings? Well, you could list all the reasons you're good at what you do. You could make an end-of-week review to see your progress. You could get a bottle of your favorite wine to celebrate your improvement. Again, just a few different examples of how you can take the responsibility of your need for love, for safety, for recognition back into your own hands. Do for yourself what you wish they would do for you. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Do for yourself what you wish your partner, the society, or your boss would do for you. And lastly, frustration might be a sign that you're not being loyal to your true self. When I lived in London, I went to lots of parties that didn't feel like me. I remember going to a rave once. It was in an old abandoned building with a giant hole in the ceiling. I went to the bar and asked for a gin and tonic. It was in a small plastic cup and cost something crazy like £14 or something. I turned around and someone elbowed the drink out of my hands and onto the floor. I was so frustrated. Most people were on drugs. I was sober as can be. I stood in a corner trying to fake a smile while I was dreaming about my bed and judging everyone there, hating every minute of it. Looking back though, I was not frustrated with the place or the people there, but subconsciously frustrated with myself for betraying me by deciding to go there when what I truly wanted was to stay home. Some people spend a lot of time feeling frustrated with their partner, for example, instead of dealing with the real frustration they feel towards themselves for staying in a relationship that's no longer good for them. That kind of frustration is a rebellion from your core, your soul, your heart, your inner child, however you want to call it. The part of you that sees through your bullshit and knows that you are going to that rave to please your friends and staying with that partner because you're afraid to end up alone or to hurt their feelings. Perhaps your brain, heart, and body are just out of alignment, that what you think, feel, and do are not the same. If my brain wants to be reading in bed, my heart feels tired, and yet my body is standing in a rave at 3 a.m, I'm out of alignment, right? And that's likely to create a lot of frustration. But it's not the fault of the place, the kind of music, or the kind of people that are hanging out there. When I was in the Sierra Nevada on the PCT, we found a beautiful alpine lake to swim in and everyone decided to jump off a cliff together. I was putting on my sandals to make sure that my feet would be safe before joining the others. And Ollie said something like, you won't need these. They'll just make it harder to swim. And I decided to listen. Next thing I knew, my foot got scratched on a rock and I was bleeding, pissed off with Ollie. But again, was my frustration against Ollie justified, or just a way to avoid the frustration I felt towards myself for not listening to my gut? We often try to find an external container to pour our frustration in. Someone to blame or something to be annoyed with. It feels good for a short while, but the frustration is always going to come back again and again if we believe that our external environment is what creates it. if we are waiting for everyone to do the right thing for us to be happy. Practice staying true to your core and listening to your gut, even if it means, actually, especially if it means going against the grain, disappointing someone, or risking rejection. It might be uncomfortable at first. Actually, it will be uncomfortable at first, but damn, the peace of mind is so good. All right, next time you're frustrated, here are useful questions you can ask yourself. If you're letting someone else govern your life, ask, how can I take the responsibility of my inner peace back into my own hands? If one of your needs is being unmet, ask, what do I need right now? And how can I meet this need on my own? If you're not being true to yourself, ask, how can I realign with my truth? And that's it for today, my friends. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if it was. I love hearing your insights, so don't hesitate to DM me on Instagram at selfgrowthnerds. And if you need help managing an overload of frustration, let me know. We can sit together and work through it all so you find peace of mind again. Let's take a deep breath before we all go back into our respective lives. I will see you all next week. You just listened to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I hope you enjoyed. We publish an episode every Monday, so make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified. I want to thank my friend Etienne Galano for editing this, and I want to thank you, kind-hearted souls, for doing the inner work necessary to grow into your truest self and make the world a better, more beautiful place. My name is Marie, and I will talk to you next week.